Hello, and welcome back to our next episode of The Fifth Seat, where we have some great topics for you today, including the very first one, which is a personal favorite of mine, dealing with the Constitution, of course. So we've had executive orders issued by governors all across in every single state at some point during this COVID-19 crisis, and the state of Michigan is no exception. In fact, our governor has issued so many, even her own attorneys have acknowledged on the record in front of the Michigan Supreme Court that they can't keep up with how many that she's been issuing. So with that in mind, I just wanted to share that our first topic of the day is about the Michigan Supreme Court ruling last night at 4:35 p.m. that our governor has not only violated our 1976 Emergency Management Act by issuing these executive orders after April 30th, which is a unanimous decision, 7-0, but also that a 4-3 decision that the entirety of the older 1945 Act is entirely unconstitutional. So those were some wins for liberty, not as strong as I'd like to see, but some things I'd like to share with us anyway. So to get the topic of conversation going, frame of reference, this case was actually not what some people have seen and heard of, the more popular case here in Michigan. Now, don't get me wrong, our governor is being sued by a lot of people in a lot of different courts right now, and she should. But the most popular case that people think of in Michigan is the Michigan legislature's lawsuit against the governor. This is not the case that the Michigan Supreme Court was hearing. In fact, what actually happened was a group of 3 doctors and 1 patient sued the governor, the Michigan Attorney General, and the director of the Department of Health and Human Services here in Michigan in federal district court about the denial of basic services that were happening with the executive orders. So when the federal court judge started to hear the arguments, he decided that some of these issues were based on state law and state constitutional principles. So he wanted to make sure the state Supreme Court had a first crack at it, if you will. So they did 2 certified questions to the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court then allowed us all, as attorneys here in Michigan, to offer briefs and try to get oral argument. And so I actually was one of the lucky few attorneys who did not represent a party, but yet was allowed to argue in front of the Michigan Supreme Court on September 9th on these very issues. So just last night, 4:35 p.m., the court answered the federal district court's 2 questions, which number 1 was, did our governor violate any state law after April 30th by continuing to exercise these emergency powers? Question number 2 was specifically, do either of the Emergency Management Act or the Emergency Powers of Governor Act, the 2 main statutes at play here in Michigan, did they violate the separation of powers clause of the Michigan State Constitution? So I was very pleased to see that they in fact said, yes, it's very obvious that she violated the Emergency Management Act after April 30th, 7-0 decision, wonderful. But it was only a 4-3 decision saying that the that the Emergency Powers of Governor Act from 1945 violated our state constitution. What's important here is that this is not just a Michigan issue. Separation of powers is something that happens, it needs to happen in every single state and in our federal government. So we have in our state constitution, if I happen to reference Article 3, Section 2, that's our separation of powers clause. But we also have similar stuff in our United States Constitution. And in fact, Article 4, Section 4 of our United States Constitution guarantees us that Republican form of government, where we do retain the powers of the people and then have those elective positions where we have people represent us. So with that in mind, I just wanted to read one particular sentence that might start the conversation off about that separation of powers clause. So the four justices in the Michigan Supreme Court that said that in fact the EPGA, the older statute, is a violation. They said that the EPGA was unconstitutional in its entirety, and that it violates the separation of powers clause. Now, Justice Viviano agreed with that conclusion, but he actually says that the governor is allowed to declare a state of emergency when public safety is imperiled, but that part does not allow for declarations of emergency to confront public health events like pandemics, COVID-19, because public health and public safety are not synonymous. So with that in mind, I have a lot to say on this myself, but kind of wanted to open up the topic of conversation. Any thoughts from you guys?
Isn't it hard to divide those two, safety and health?
Absolutely not, I would say.
Oh, okay.
I would argue one would be more like a physical attack, like a military threat or something to that extent. With a health issue, because there's so much debate. Even though we know science is never settled. When people say that, that's a total misnomer, because that the nature of science is inquiry. So there's always going to be more questions. And I also think the separation of powers is so important. That's the framework of our nation. So we don't have a Queen Gretchen. No, we don't have someone operating in that capacity the way the public always has a voice, because ultimately she's not our ruler. We put her, well, not we, because I didn't vote for her, but people elected her to serve a job and to work for us, not to dictate our lives and to control us. And I think she's she's lost sight of that very much.
I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts so far? Or otherwise I can give you some more to go off of and then.
Well, I mean, it's an awful lot that you've laid out here in terms of the language of the Constitution. I mean, I'm someone saying, okay, I don't know chapter and verse, but I certainly don't want to have our government officials treading on, the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. In regard to the distinction between health and safety, I think that as we move forward, that can get very muddy in terms of the waters, because being safe and being healthy, I don't see that as a clear distinction. So I don't know. I think that when the justices said, she needs to roll back those restrictions because of the fact that she's not supposed to be infringing upon, our rights if it's only health. But I think that kind of, echoing, the previous thought of, I think it's difficult to separate out the two. I mean, I think that was a great example that you had, but when you talk about a pandemic, that is bigger than just, another wave of the flu or something like that.
And I think that's a fair point, but also we need to consider that a lot of people were missing out on other healthcare services, because I found it interesting that there were doctors who brought the suit. So you had people missing out on a lot of quality of life operations or cancer screening. So we don't know how many people died unnecessarily because they weren't going to the doctor out of fear of COVID, or because of the restrictions, or certain services were just canceled altogether. So that is other quality of life and health issues that were being exacerbated by her unnecessary rulings.
So I'm curious to see what the two of you think about this with your initial comment and this. So keep in mind, with health and safety, you said it'd be hard to keep them separate, and you kind of basically said the same thing.
Exactly.
Does this, does it change your mind at all? Or what do you think of the concept that in our, we've been kind of taught that public safety, public health, public welfare, those are things that our government is supposed to do. We've grown up thinking that. What if I told you that the word health, not even public health, health, is nowhere in the U.S. Constitution?
Irrelevant.
Nowhere.
Irrelevant.
What if I told you that the word safety is only in the Constitution once, and it's in the portion that talks about, you can't suspend the writ of habeas corpus except in rare times when the public safety may require it. So in other words, it really doesn't address this situation at all. So for all intents and purposes, health and safety, whether you separate them or not, neither one is in the Constitution. In other words, when we have a Republican form of government, Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution, that guarantees us the right that we the people are in control, and we elect people to represent us, they can only act to the extent that we give them authority. So if the words health and safety essentially do not appear in the Constitution at all, the U.S. Constitution, where on earth?
Argue that point.
Yeah.
It says promote the general welfare right here.
No. Read the whole thing there. The whole sentence.
It says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare."
Okay, I'm gonna pause right there. So
and secure the
provide,
blessings of liberty
right?
to ourselves and our posterity.
Do ordain and establish the Constitution.
Right.
So provide for one, but promote the general welfare. Promote.
Right.
So the word welfare is in there. It's in two places.
Let's clarify what we're arguing first. What exactly is the argument?
Well, regardless of whether it's public health or public safety, right? Which is the concept that both of them had actually come up from different ends of the political spectrum, nonetheless. Whether we're concerned with pandemic, if it's a public safety thing or public health thing, neither one gives the government the authority to act in a way to trample upon our rights that, by the way, our state constitution, and every state has their own constitution, but our state constitution, the entire first article is based on our rights. It's the Declaration of Rights. And then we have our United States Constitution, which for the most part, we'll just say it's the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. So we have rights. We don't have to prove that we have them. We get to exercise them no matter what. And you said prior that the whole purpose of government is to secure those rights. So the government can only act insofar as they are securing our rights. And trying to focus on whether it's public safety or public health is
I want to
irrelevant.
clarify that. I didn't say that. I didn't say those words. I believe that the government's purpose is to do exactly what the Constitution says verbatim.
Right,
I
which
never
is
said secure the
promote
rights.
the general welfare.
Promote the general welfare.
That doesn't mean
Securing
regulate
rights
the
is part of
people.
what we do. Promoting the general welfare involves other aspects.
Regulating the people?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of it. That's what laws are for.
The funny thing is you read that out of which part, though? The preamble?
The preamble to the Constitution.
So it doesn't give any governing authority any kind of authority to act, any branch of government. It's not in Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. It's just in the preamble saying the whole purpose that we're creating this government
Just
to
the
promote.
preamble?
If you're,
What
listen, hold on a second here. Catherine,
The
you know what?
constitutioniness.
Listen, I love you. I
is
think you're
being
fantastic,
questioned.
and we're having a lot of fun here, right? But if you're going to single me out and say you're saying this or that, I want to know what we're arguing about.
Right.
What are you exactly defending here?
Constitution does not allow, whether it's an executive order that's based on public safety concerns or public health concerns.
Right.
There's no authority given to the governors across our United States
so
to do that.
the real issue that I think we should be talking about in this segment is related to emergency management. I think that's what you're trying to bring up, right? So the fact that some governors have been able to shut down economies and say pick and choose on which businesses get to stay open and get to and have to close, and then potentially mandate that people have to wear masks in public, it's all a violation of our constitutional rights. It's all enabled by the Emergency Powers Act at the state level. And as a matter of fact, it's the same law at the federal level that allows us to send our troops overseas indefinitely without a congressional declaration of war. These are all related. Right? That's the issue here. The issue is that we're not relating back to what it says in the Constitution. We do have a 10th Amendment, which allows for the separation of the federal level from the state level. So in other words, Governor Whitmer is beholden to the state constitution, which I don't know as much as you do about that. So I would defer. But I believe the argument that you're making is that the Emergency Powers Act in particular is unconstitutional. Right, and so if you're arguing that, then we agree on that. And I don't know if anyone really would disagree on that.
And then the other question I have too is about with the separation of powers as far as the legislature. So she kind of iced them out, and us as electing them, that means we want them to speak on our behalf. That's the whole nature of our system of government. And so for her to just unilaterally decide to make these choices without their input is problematic, because it will just lead to other situations where she just takes it upon herself to say, oh, well, this is an emergency, so I have to do this, and you guys just have to listen to me, Queen Gretchen.
So I would say the last to tie in those two is that's where the court decided it, because quite frankly the federal district court questioned specifically on whether the separation of powers clause was offended by these statutes, which it was. But to your point, I agree that all of our other rights are being infringed, and it's unconstitutional. A variety of other aspects, whether it's public health or public safety,
Sure.
was what I was getting at. Sure. So, but with that in mind, that conversation could obviously take hours, and so I think we have some other topics that we wanted to cover today.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to the topic number 2, about the government replacing the family in many regards. As we have looked at in our society, it's like the family unit is is breaking apart. And in America, it's very essential that the family stay solid, because for a free society, it requires a moral people. And we get our morality and our understanding of how to function in the world from our family. And we're seeing an explosion in America. So it's more of a social issue of, right now in America, like 40% of children are born out of wedlock. And there was actually a study done by the Fragile Family and Wellbeing Study, I believe it was done by Princeton, that they concluded that over a long period of time that children living in single parent homes are more susceptible to every societal ill, considering all other social factors. So what's happening is, even when we were talking about COVID, a lot of the problem is that you have a single parent, they have to go to work, and then they're not there to able to look after the children while they're doing virtual learning. So oftentimes it's causing a lot of other issues. That was just one issue. So with that being said, as the family breaks down, the government necessarily grows, because somebody has to provide social order if the family isn't doing so. So what type of social problems, or what can we do about this problem? Ms.
In
Knight?
years past, it was the charities, the churches, the Jewish churches, the Catholic churches in the early 1900s that jumped in and helped out these poor people. We didn't have those Medicaid and so on at that time. In fact, there was something that I taught my students at one time, the orphan train. They took a bunch of kids from New York City and they farmed them out all across the country to families, and they adopted them. So it was all taken care of, at least in part, by charities.
But I think that was also a horrifying experience for many people. I mean, what I know of the orphan train and the personal stories is how miserable that experience was.
No,
oh, yeah.
I didn't get
and
that.
a lot of abuse. I mean, again, as soon as you have any large program with very vulnerable populations who can't say no, you're going to get abuse.
Which you have even now that the government manages this whole program. So just because government's now involved doesn't mean that it's any better.
Right.
In fact, I would argue that it's much worse, because the public in general, we have this, I think we can all agree that it's okay to have, this watchful eye on private business for some reason. But then in general, our society is saying, oh, well, we shouldn't really question government as much, though. Questioning government is bad. I mean, I don't agree with doing that or having that perspective, but I think we could probably all agree that in a large extent, that's what happens here in the United States today.
I think the problem is trying to strike a balance. It may seem off topic, but it's actually quite relevant. So I was reading a book called The Poisoner's Handbook, and it was kind of discussing how people, it was very common practice in the early 20th century to poison people. And also sometimes it was by accident. Certain products that were being created had like arsenic and different things. Like say if you were polishing silver and then you had a cut in your hand, now the person's dead. So my point is that it was a good thing that the government got involved to put regulations on what could be in certain products, because it was a public safety and a health issue. The question is, where do we strike the balance?
Okay,
And I think that's ultimately some of the issue here.
I'd like to jump in here, because I think what we have is we've got a couple different perspectives have been represented, right? So Judy, you were talking about there was a time before there were these programs that were created, right? And then and then Laura, you were talking about, well, then there were some problems with that, and now we've got these programs, right? President Lincoln said that the greatest imperative of government is to furnish the people with a sound and uniform currency in order to protect the wages of labor against vicious currency. In brackets there, you should envision inflationary bank-owned currency. Now, Christina, you're sitting in a chair that's got 4 legs on it, right? Mm-hmm. If I were to cut off one of those legs, would you still be sitting comfortably in that? No. Right, okay. Now, so the reason why I bring that up is because that's what money does. It provides us with a solid foundation of things, right? So if you take away the foundation of money, then all of a sudden you destabilize the entire society, and the society is that chair, right? So I guess the point that I'm trying to make here, and the question that I have for you guys, is do you think it's possible that if we have a privately owned bank managing and inflating away our currency, that it's possible to destabilize the family in the process, and as a result, create the impetus for more government programs, which are generally, provisioned in a very inefficient manner.
Absolutely,
right?
possibility.
Which continues this argument and creates division in America. And instead of us viewing ourselves as Americans, we're viewing ourselves as Republican or Democratic. right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I would like to, and I guess the one thing I want to say is I value hearing what you have to say on this. I mean, I'd value anybody on this, but in case you guys don't know, he actually has a financial background. So I'm listening with that kind of watchful ear to see what he's bringing to the table with that, because you've had dealings in finances and as a financial advisor and watching the markets. And so you have that more expertise coming from that angle. So I find that interesting that I never would have thought that would come into the conversation as much as some of these other topics that I would have seen coming, you know.
I think two things can be true at once. You know, there
Yeah,
can be multiple.
I agree.
It can be multiple things. That makes sense what he's saying. There can be multiple issues fueling the problem of the family breakdown, which is necessarily going to grow the government and get the government more involved. And oftentimes, when the government is involved trying to fix these issues, they only make it worse. I mean, just look at education. I mean, standardized testing. I don't want to get off topic, but I mean, this is a perfect example of them doing something, and compelling people to do something, or trying to solve a problem and only making it worse.
All right, so I know the three of you have children. Christina, do you have children?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 mothers here, right? And would you say, and I think I know the answer to this, do you say that you feel that you are empowered to make your own decisions as consumers to buy whatever it is that you feel that you like?
Yes.
Okay, now, do you trust your own decisions more than you trust the government to make decisions for you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if the government, now does that take away the fact that there still are problems that need to be dealt with, right? We still have these challenges, right? So wouldn't it be a better idea to start with fixing the currency, making sure that it's backed by nature so that's not inflated away, and then pursuing policies that put money directly into the pockets of the homeowner, of the individual, of the family, right? So that you can make decisions that are good for you, but at the same time, we're also taking care of, and the money is available for healthcare because it's given to you instead of controlled by the government. Does that make sense? Like, how do you feel about that sort of thing?
You mean like taking through taxes and then giving it back to you in the form of some sort of credit to be able to get health care?
Well, I mean, right now we're taking from you from taxes anyway. We're spending $1.5 trillion a year on healthcare. That money is going to the federal government. That money is being spent on Medicare and Medicaid. So that's already happening.
Right.
What I'm proposing is that instead we spend most of that money and give it back to the individual person, so that like we had I think it was last week that we had Dr. Chad Savage on the show, and he was talking about how you can have individuals making purchases directly on their behalf for their own health, and that drives down the cost.
Direct primary care.
Right. So what if we could actually put money in the pockets of the American people without raising taxes to do it? Because we've already got the tax revenue's already been taken out, right? We're already spending the money on that. And then giving it to you so that you can make decisions for yourself about what is best to take care of your families.
But why
I don't
make-
like
why
the
make
word
us
give.
Yeah.
Well,
don't like the word give.
all right.
Why
We'll
pay the
replace
tax in the
with
first
give,
place?
but return it back
Okay,
to you.
it's-
I'd say don't take it in the
see,
first place.
But yeah, why take it in the first place? Because then it just goes through
Well-
an unnecessary bureaucrat who's going to siphon
That's
some
true.
off the top. So we might as well just keep our
That, I
money.
mean, okay, so fine. Do you believe, Christine, it's a great point, I'm glad you raised it. So do you believe that somebody with more money is due better health care and a better lifestyle than
No.
somebody?
It's not. It's
Puerto
what you
Rico,
earn.
the people in Detroit, the war on drugs, like all these things are
we're
complete.
we're bringing in a lot of different issues because I mean, in America, you're free to do whatever you want. You really are. You're free to.
Well,
pursue
that's
your-
what we're
and
told.
then
That's
too-
not- that's
and then
not true.
also- wait,
That's
yes,
not what's
yes,
happening.
it is. Well, okay, I can't fly. Of course, there's limitations on
Nah,
anything.
that-
but the thing about
We-
it is,
we
you're
would
free to
be
pursue.
true- Well,
You're free
but
to
hold on a
pursue your
second.
own passion if you want to. The thing about it is, you're not going to get equity in society. There's a difference between equality and equity. Equity is when you have free beings. You're always going to have some things that are unequitable. The only way to have everything fair across the board is communism.
I think you
and
agree
I will
with
not
that.
have that.
I
can say
I
that
totally
right now.
agree with that. The problem I have is that we're not following the Constitution at all. I mean, I drive down the street, I see people of all color being pulled over, but primarily black men. I mean, let's call it for what it is, being pulled over on the side of the street.
You have some good thoughts, but I think I
I want to
hear-
finish. It's a violation of our rights, right? It's a violation.
Right.
So where we do not own our money, whoever makes the money makes the rules. And if we don't own our money, we're not going to have the ability to make the rules.
But
and therefore,
the
that's how the
topic-
Constitution ends up getting thrown into the heap of a trash pile and lighting on fire.
But the
which is
topic
what's
at
going
hand
on
was
right
the
now.
destruction of the family unit and how the government is seeping into that. So I guess, I mean, not that what you're saying isn't, I'm not saying it's not true or anything, but I guess to be fair, I actually want to hear a little bit of the common liberal perspective, if you will, about what are your thoughts on some of this, whether it's tying in what he has said or just some of this discussion you guys were having earlier about the, you know, how things were done by private agencies. What is your take on some of this?
I mean, one of my concerns is, you know, all of the research that's coming out with how important that 0 to 5 years are. And so, you know, again, whether it's done through some sort of, you know, private, you know, credit that the government gives you or through government agencies, I think that we're really falling down as Americans in terms of taking care of children from 0 to 5.
That's why Head
And
Start was started.
and supporting parents, and you know, making their ability to leave the home every day possible, knowing that they've got people supporting them.
So I have a question for you before we jump in with Judy's thoughts on it. So is your perspective more of a term of offering services or care or whatnot for the development of 0 to 5, or is your philosophy more of kind of like a mandate? We want to make sure that all children are getting XYZ services. And
I don't like the word mandate.
Well, I don't either, and that's why. But I want to know what your
Well,
thoughts.
but we have at 5 we have kindergarten, right? And we have
Not mandatory till they're in first
6.
grade.
Okay, so at 6 we have kindergarten. I mean, 6 we have, you know, that mandate, and I think that we need to think about taking care of those years, let's say between 3 and 6, much more carefully.
But
and
again,
supporting parents in that way.
so I guess, for example, my question, just to make sure I'm hearing your thoughts correctly, are we have in Michigan one of the better states when it comes to homeschooling rights and the right of parents, getting back to the concept here of the question, whether government's kind of interjecting itself too much in the core of the family. And so I have children in public school, my older kids, but I've gone back and forth on kid number 3, and then kid number 4 spent kindergarten in public school, but she's homeschooled now, and she was homeschooled in preschool. So I have the right in the schooling sense to be able to do whatever kind of school curriculum that I would like to. And so are you thinking of something that is an offering if parents wanted to take the opportunity to utilize some sort of 3-year-old through 6-year-old programming and opportunities that way, or are you thinking more of in terms of something that everyone kind of has to do to make sure kids are all getting the same basis?
Well, I don't like the idea of saying this is what you need to do, but I think that not having really reliable, affordable childcare is an incredibly important problem.
That's a big
Okay.
problem.
It's a huge
Can we talk
problem.
about why that's a problem?
Well, it depends.
Why don't you tell me?
Well, I would like to ask you. So, in a two income household, does that not drive up the cost? Because now all of a sudden you have to pay for childcare, right?
Right.
No, I had to pay for childcare as a single mom going to college and law school.
Okay. All right. So that's
$1,100 a month that I had to get student loan dollars just to pay for.
okay. So the cost of things are going way up. First off,
And child
right?
support didn't even touch it. So I think it was more expensive for me as a single parent than it is as a married parent.
Oh,
Absolutely.
for sure. Yes.
And
yes.
that's
And the
kinda-
government didn't help me at all.
And that's kind of to my point. You know, that was kind of to the original question, is in our society, we're seeing this social fabric breakdown.
Right.
And it's like raising children, to me in our society, and this is where culture and politics intermixes. And I think sometimes we try to separate culture and politics, and you really can't, because one definitely influences the other. And in our society, we're so casual and libertine, and we don't respect children. We don't respect what it means to be a parent. We don't respect what it means to bring children in the world. And we've talked about this before, but I personally feel a lot of it has to do with the sexual revolution. It was just like, go off with anybody, like, and just go out with anybody, it doesn't matter, without any kind of thought of, wow, a child could come into this picture. And so if you are in a dysfunctional relationship with someone you're not committed to, and you bring a child in, that's necessarily going to cause strife. And that necessarily is going to create a situation where both parties, maybe not, are not prepared to provide the child everything it needs.
But
to
they
be
have a free
successful.
will.
Yeah, they have free will, but see, that's where the church comes in. See, again,
Well,
see, that's what I kind of like. I like de Tocqueville's quote about America. America needs Christianity. America needs that because Judeo-Christian values are about people being self-regulated. A free society only will maintain if we are self-regulated. But if we are not self-regulated, are we totally out of control, the government necessarily grows. Just think of even the gun rights debate.
I fundamentally absolutely disagree with that argument.
That's fine, but it's still true.
It's not true.
It is true.
This is if we adhere to the Constitution.
No, what does that have to do with people being irresponsibly procreating? That's biology. That's human nature. Just like our gun laws. We did not even discuss limiting gun rights until after Columbine. People got out of control.
Right, you have some good points in that, but I want to tie in something you said. I want to back up just a second to what you said, because a gun right, well, that's going to be a whole nother conversation. But the concept, though, of you're talking about, that we're pushing out basically religion, we're pushing out Christianity, essentially was what you're alluding to with some of that. And I'm wondering, though, with the concept of the history of how it used to be, Christian and other private organizations that were offering the different services, with the concern that we need to make sure there's something in place for that, 0 to 5-year-olds or 0 to 6-year-olds, just leaving us maybe with the thought, maybe the last few comments perhaps, on whether we could do what he started off talking about is, I think, if I heard him right, of getting the government out of all those things and not overtaxing and not over-regulating. If we allow those private and specifically religious organizations to step in and be able to make those offerings to people so that we can get needs met without government trying to figure out how to reinvent the wheel in ways that we as people should be trusted to be able to come together to be able to provide for each other in that way.
Churches can't raise enough money in order to have preschool for everybody.
And that's what my point. If you're having a mass number of children who are brought into homes, are being raised up where the parents are not stable and able to adequately care for them, the church cannot cover that bill.
But if the church is not restrained as much as it is today, though, financially, it's the big reason why a lot of churches don't get politically involved, for example. So if we can separate all those restraints and take the chains off of our different religious organizations, then we're able to allow them to rise up and truly make offerings and make connections with people in the community, where people are then able to understand and get tighter roots to their Christian faith or other faith and be able to have that support system and be able to learn those morals, which again is something that is very important. I'll just say our state constitution says that religion, morality, and knowledge are necessary to good government. That's in the Michigan state constitution. So at any rate, I think if we tie in...
Mom and Dad are working. They don't have time for all that stuff. So they've got to do the best they can.
I remember one of my teachers in college mentioned that, with more women going to work, no one talked about who's going to care for the children.
Right.
But why were more women going to work in the first place? Again, since 1973, we have lost 98% of the value of our dollar.
Now there we go to another point. Two things could be true at once.
That is really the only point, because if I give you $1 and you give me back 2 cents, and I have to raise a family on 2 cents. Right? Does that not create problems in healthcare, problems in education, problems in housing, problems in everything, problems in money problems? I'm going to get divorced now because I can't afford to pay bills.
It does.
Everything comes down to money, and in America,
we have a lot of problems. And speaking of problems, though, we have another topic that I think you were going to introduce.
We're going to jump into our QWERTY quips. All right, so now it's time for our QWERTY quips. So I'm going to start. This is from Bill O'Reilly, and I thought this was really, really interesting. So this actually happened a few weeks ago, that Newt Gingrich was on the Fox show, The Five, or Outnumbered. He was on, and he tweeted that Soros is using billions of dollars to undermine the justice system in the United States, and you can't discuss that. So he said that because Newt Gingrich had brought up that George Soros is funding the campaigns of a lot of these district attorneys across America. The same district attorneys that he funded are the ones who are letting these peaceful protesters, shall we call them, out after they've committed crimes. So the funny part is that Fox is usually labeled as a right-wing network, but even on this quote-unquote right-wing network, they silenced Newt Gingrich from bringing up that point. How do you guys feel about that?
Not like anybody silencing anybody.
Yeah. You silence Newt Gingrich?
Well,
really? Newt Gingrich can't just talk on his own? Really?
Wait a minute.
Fox News? Give me him. I don't believe that. I'm not buying that at all. Especially somebody like that.
So wait a minute. So exactly what? So Fox News.
Well, Newt Gingrich was on the show, the Fox cable news network.
Sure.
He was on the show Outnumbered. and he mentioned the fact that George Soros is funding these district attorneys, and they're letting people out. So I'm sorry, I didn't explain clearly. So one of the people on the, a couple of people on the show was like, okay, we're not going to bring him up. You can't. We're not talking about George Soros.
A producer
no,
said, don't
the
do that?
co-host. One of the co-hosts. I'm sorry, I didn't explain well. I'm acting as though you guys knew the story. The co-host shut him down and was like, no, you can't. We're not talking about George Soros.
Well, was the information verified? I mean, a lot of people attribute George Soros with a lot of things, and it's like this guy is all powerful. If he's making contributions to a DA, then that's going to show up on the public contribution record. And with the fact that there's so much news out there that, quite frankly, no offense to you, sir, but I think there's a lot of news out there, and it's nothing to do with any of your stories, but in general, there's a lot of fake news out there.
Well,
just because you're a newscaster.
It wasn't a dispute issue. They just said we don't want to talk about it.
Just
so it wasn't a disputed story.
I'm just saying, I would like to see the actual political contributions in order for me to trust it.
I've seen a lot. Now, not necessarily those particular ones that you're talking about, but as of 2 years ago, I extensively researched the kinds of contributions that were going from either party over to certain kinds of candidates and things. And I will tell you that back from then, from what I saw, that has absolutely 100% authenticity to it, that there was no, and I don't think the reason why they wanted to shut it down was not because they had a dispute about whether it was true, but because they couldn't dispute that it was true. It's available in publicly accessible documents from the FEC or campaign finance situations. We see it in our state level. So absolutely, I think that's a problem when we're going to shut down the truth. It's one thing if you don't like, you're going to have diverging interests. We could probably talk about anything in here. We're going to be able to have a disagreement about and go, but I can't imagine that one of us would be able to say, well, no, we just can't talk about that at all. I mean, that just doesn't seem right.
But Christine, is your point though that the media was being, the information was being shut down by a media organization? That's your point. It's not whether it's true or not. That's irrelevant.
Right.
Truth is irrelevant here. Right. It's just the media is being shut down, or someone's speech is being shut down by the media. That was your point, wasn't it?
It's that.
I'm not buying that.
Why not?
Because you know what? Here's the deal. When we go on a show like this, if you guys want to talk about credit unions, or you want to talk about Black Lives Matters, or you're the Supreme Court, if it's not topical, if it's off topic, we do it. I want to keep on going on credit unions or whatever else is. Sometimes there's a timing issue. Sometimes there's an interest issue. If I don't know the topic, don't embarrass me. I don't know about Soros. I never heard of the guy. I don't know if gang gratuity. I don't know.
So you don't think topic censorship actually happens, though? Not for the reasons that you're saying, but just saying, no, we're not going to talk about that at all. We're going to shut you down because we don't even want our listeners to have to be exposed to that. That doesn't happen at all?
No, I think when news judgment is made, at least we do a show, Let It Rip, and I know, Christina, you've been on it before, there's got to be an interest. And so I think it's not the topic. What you guys are discussing here is fantastic. It's great. But I think your audience is limited. So it's going to be limited until this group of NPR is a fantastic. You guys don't like NPR, but they do a lot of in-depth research.
I do.
Though.
I like
you
NPR.
like it. There you go. I figured I got one. But it's a very specific niche, and the ratings don't reflect it. If I go on Fox 2 and talk about half the stuff you guys, and I don't want to say I want to badmouth it here, but some media organization, if you're talking about Fox or MSNBC or C-SPAN or not C-SPAN, CNN, I gotta speak to people that are all over the board.
Right.
Whatever is interesting and for people in Ypsilanti has to also appeal to people in Centerline, to people in Port Huron, and it's difficult. And so, and I'm not making excuses, but sometimes we kind of glance over a little bit, which is probably you don't like that, but I've got to make
because
it at least
you are
interesting.
making a judgment though. But you're making a judgment that things are going to be interesting. I don't just mean you, but I mean in this situation, I would definitely argue that everybody in the country would at least have an interest in hearing about George Soros. So might not be on one side or the other, but to be able to have that whole topic just shut down, like no, we're not even going to go there. That to me seems like it's
too in the weeds. It's too minutiae. We say to me when we do Let It Rip.
We're assuming that people are too stupid to be able to keep up and be interested.
I don't think so because you can get the news out. But not on Fox. Was it on Fox?
It was
a popular
on the
show.
Cable News Network. It was called The Show Is Outnumbered.
And how long is that show? Is it they do a 4-minute segment?
But if I remember correctly, they were talking about the protest. So what you're saying, I'm sure is true in some cases, but in this one, it didn't.
It was on the topic. It directly tied to the topic.
It's kind of relevant because George Soros is funding a
Now,
lot of these candidates.
that is
But-
purely speculative.
No, how
What's
can you say it's
speculative?
That's
You can't-
entirely
Just 'cause
speculative.
you don't know about it, it's
You can't
speculative?
prove that George Soros
can't
paid for a
disprove it.
pile of bricks to be delivered so that some idiot can throw them through a
So
glass
wait a minute,
window.
hold on, that's not true. There was a U-Haul truck in Kentucky. They found them bringing out riot material, and the woman who
And
name
George
let me
Soros
finish,
was
let me
there?
finish.
Hold on, hold
Did I
on.
say
Did
that?
you go
Hold on,
follow
hold on,
them?
hold on. Did I
Let's
say
finish
that?
this
Let me
quick.
finish. So the U-Haul truck, it
drive
was
in the truck.
rented under the name of a woman who worked for George Soros. So we're supposed to pretend that this guy who transferred his entire wealth into his Open Society Foundation for political activity isn't behind this, even though he has ties to all these people, these district attorneys, and the woman who rented a
So
U-Haul
you're-
truck
so-
for riot gear. I'm not saying he's the only player involved, but he is not this fictitious boogeyman. He's actually a real one.
Christina, of course he's a of course he's a boogeyman in a society that's entirely closed source. The guy put his money in an open source concept. He's from the perspective of the authoritarian America, he's the enemy. But here's
No,
the thing.
America's not authoritarian.
Right
that is
now-
ridiculous.
About
Maybe
that
I,
other
maybe I,
subject.
maybe I missed this. Maybe
we
this is a
can-
good topic. I don't know. Keep on going. I don't know.
No,
This is interesting. I don't know.
he gave a speech at the World Economic Club, I believe it's in Davos, Switzerland, talking about we have to build these open societies and talking about shutting down President Trump. No, George Soros. Okay, I think we need to move
I
on.
think
To
if
the
you
second
get-
clip. We're gonna move on because we're gonna go down.
I just say I don't trust the woman who said she's working for George Soros. She probably doesn't even know the guy. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I think he's got
Yeah.
a point. All right, so my tweet comes from KOIN News out on the West Coast, and they relate that tweets shared thousands of times claim Democrats might have somehow intentionally infected the president with the coronavirus during the debates. And their title here is "Misinformation Spikes as Trump Confirms COVID-19 Diagnosis."
What station is that?
California?
California.
California.
This information spikes.
The
as a result of-
Democrats poisoned Trump? That's what they're saying?
Yeah.
And they believe that stuff?
Well,
What are their ratings?
Let me just say,
It's getting some airplay.
I
This
just
is
want
what
to
I'm
say that
saying
I
is
think Democrats are responsible for a lot of things, and they're a lot to blame in a lot of different aspects, but it never would occur to me to give any kind of ounce of credibility to the concept that Democrats were trying to intentionally inflict President Trump with COVID-19. Like, that just seems so absurd. I can't even imagine
that is
a
ridiculous.
California news station would pick that up. I mean, sorry. Wow. That's crazy.
That sounds like an opinion piece. Is that an opinion piece?
No, what they
that's-
were.
what is that, a tweet from-
Their story was that this has taken, so it has gotten some traction on social media, and they're reporting that people are
Believing it.
promoting this idea.
Is that
and-
to favor Republicans then? Is this a means in which to rally Republicans? Are the Democrats poisoned our president?
I think that's what their
Is that the
idea.
That's what their
idea is-
allegation
Yes.
is.
I don't think Republicans are that stupid. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I don't think that they are going to just say, "Oh, the Democrats." No one's going to believe that.
I think our society is overly suspicious. I mean, there's a fine line. I am a bit of a skeptic on a lot of things,
Right.
But some stuff goes way
Did you
into
like
the
that
weeds.
post?
And the thing
You
too,
liked it.
No, I did. That is ridiculous. Or even people.
She just
saying
retweeted
that,
it 3 times.
Like people saying that President Trump is faking his COVID. You know, you have people saying he's faking it. I think what Joy Reid, I think her name is from MSNBC. I could be wrong. Somebody please tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty positive that she is alleging that he is faking the whole thing. So I believe our society is, in some regards, is
So
going
there
too far.
is, I mean, as far as media-wise go, I think that the fact that the president has COVID, how is that going to play in the election? I do think it's
That's
a
a big
political
question.
issue. I mean, Joe Biden now supposedly removed all negative ads. The president's going to quarantine. I mean, I know Gary Peters now, I just read somewhere, he may be quarantined even though he didn't test positive. So there is a political implication. Now, that's a very legitimate discussion, and we will have that discussion.
Wait, just one last thought on this issue, because I think we got to get to another Cordy quip here. But so let's leave with the concept that all of the politicians are going to be hiding. With that, Joe.
I mean, I'm definitely not hiding from anyone.
Are you
Well,
digging
okay,
your bunkers?
all the
also-
mainstream
And I don't consider
politicians.
myself a politician. I consider myself an American
candidate-
who's running to represent the American people.
Candidate and
there's a
politician.
I
It's
think
not
you've got a
exactly the same
chance
thing.
now. This might be good for you. Have them
Thank
all
you.
quarantined. You get your word out.
There we go, right? So, okay, so for the Cordy quip, again, I'm going to reference myself as the only nonpartisan member of or political candidate, right? So the quip or the QWERTY quip is whoever has the money makes the rules. Now I bring that up because that is a second definition of the golden rule, right? The golden rule is treat everyone as you wish to be treated, and then whoever has the money makes the rules. Now I'm going to go to our resident expert, Judy. Would you say that that's true?
It pretty much is.
It pretty much is, right? You told your kids whoever has.
Yes, and when you get your own job and get out of my house, you can make your own rules.
Okay, so let the record show that whoever has the money makes the rules. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because, and I'm going to go back to the conversation that we had earlier about money and about President Lincoln. All right, so we have a Federal Reserve Bank in which not a single one of us has a representative share in the bank, which means when they make trillions of dollars a year off of us, off of the interest payments that we make on our mortgage and our cars and our credit cards, none of us get a single penny of that back. However, Judy, what is the opposite of a bank?
I think it's a credit union.
I would agree with you.
All right.
And so what I would like to know, from everyone here is what would you say are the benefits and drawbacks of replacing a Federal Reserve Bank with a credit union of the United States in which everyone in America has an equal ownership stake in our economy, where we can get off of oil and out of oil wars, invest in renewables and organics, and split the profits with the people instead of with the banks? Discuss.
So I don't understand the premise here. So let's say I have my money, I deposit it in a bank, interest, whatever. I make my mortgage. The mortgage is probably a better one because the bank makes the money on the mortgage. I get that. Now, is the credit union going to lend me money for my house, right? Oh, are they?
Yes.
Well,
okay,
yes.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
So then I make my payments to the credit union. The interest on that, now where does it go?
Well, I want to be clear. If you currently bank with a bank,
Yes.
then you continue to bank with your bank. That doesn't change. From a logistical standpoint,
It's the mortgage. It's the money that the credit union makes versus the bank makes. I get it.
right.
But I'm missing where it goes.
So the
Are you
federal,
talking about tying it to really the value of the dollar and how that's generated and where in general national proceeds or profits are going? The behind the scenes banking is what you're talking
the
about, not
central
the
banking component of it is what I'm really referring to right now. So,
I have a question. Who controls the central bank?
well, that's a really good question.
That's a question.
Right? So that goes back to the lack of transparency, and that's why I keep going back to show me the proof, show me the money, right? The fact of the matter is we don't technically know anymore because the bank was established in 1913, right? So everybody who was born then more or less is dead now. So we don't know who actually owns the bank, and the problem with that is that the whole idea that it's owned by bankers from Europe and around the Soros and Rothschild and Morgan, et cetera, that's fallen into conspiracy theory. But if you look at the evidence, it's very clear because if we're in a conspiracy theory, Congress would have congressional oversight, the ability to audit the Fed, and we don't have that. But I would take a step further. I want to know why they're making money off of me and I'm not getting any money of it back.
You get a lower interest rate on the money you borrow from them, don't you?
Well,
When they're making more money off this other guy?
there's no proof of that.
Right.
What I'm saying is,
See, here's the. Oh, jeez. Okay, you're going to get elected to president. Okay, I'm talking to a president here, okay? So I would say, other than about, I don't understand what you're talking about here.
Okay, all
so
right.
you got to explain it to me, and you got to explain it to all the people out there. Now, maybe they're very smart, and they probably are. I'm not. So you've got to explain it so that it makes sense for whatever plan you have.
Okay.
And right now, I have a mortgage. I pay my interest.
Yeah.
It goes to the credit union
Yes.
as profit. They take that, and they be able to loan more money to you, Judy, for your
Right.
bank.
Right.
So where's the conspiracy? Where's the problem here?
well, that's not the current situation, right? So the current situation is that when you take out a mortgage from your bank, that money funnels up to the central bank because the central bank owns the shares and the stock of that bank, right? And so when they pay a dividend, it goes directly into their pockets, not our pockets.
But that's business, though.
Well,
But the
yes,
federal
it is
government
and
shouldn't
it's
be in the
not.
business of business. The federal government shouldn't have any.
The federal government is a private bank. But the
Well-
federal government guarantees. I think there's some guarantee loans, right? If I default on the loan, then sometimes the feds can come in and protect
We're tying into the
Bank,
Federal
yeah.
Reserve and all those concepts. We're talking about something that it's not a private entity. Anything that forcefully impacts all of our banking and all of our ability to get a mortgage or different rates or things like that. I think the point being there should be transparency. There should be, if there's any profit to be made, it should be shared amongst we the people. And those basic concepts, I think we probably would all agree. The way that you're talking about it, though, I think is where you're losing us about, changing it from a federal bank to a federal credit union and how that happens. But I think we agree with the premise.
So it goes back to the comment I made earlier about whoever has the money makes the rules, right? And so right now, because we don't have ownership in the bank and someone else does, we're living in their house under their rules. Everything is exactly the way they want it to be. We're arguing amongst ourselves instead of doing banding together and working as a team to say, look, you guys are trying to destroy America. We're all American here. We can make our own decisions.
Is this a legislative fix, or is this? Can the president sign an executive order? How do you fix this problem?
Well,
I understand the problem, but if you understand, how do we do it?
President Kennedy tried to fix it with an executive order, and we saw what happened to him, right? President Lincoln tried to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, these are some of the.
Lee Harvey
these are
Oswald
some of
did, but
the-
I don't understand what
He
okay.
counted that out.
How do you fix it? The only way to really fix it is to repeal the Federal Reserve Act of 1913.
And that was Woodrow Wilson was president, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And what happened right after that?
Crash.
Well, 1914, we went World War I, right? Okay, and then we got back from World War I. Right happened, like literally the very next
Great
year.
Depression.
Now, when they passed it in 1913, it was a 20-year lease on our money. And then so 5 years prior, in 1927, things were great. It was the Roaring 20s. That's when Congress said, hey, things are great. It's the Roaring 20s. Let's give you an indefinite lease on our money. And then, of course, we went and had the Great Depression, World War II, and then we went to Vietnam, and that got us off the gold standard. And since we get off the gold standard, the value of the dollar has completely collapsed, and now we're arguing amongst ourselves because the world is falling apart. It's all related back to the money because whoever has the money makes the rules.
You need to teach a whole course on this.
Yeah, so speaking of that, because I don't want to lose our viewers on something
Yes.
that we're struggling with, I kind of wanted to tie in some concepts that we had talked about. And you're talking about transparency on this.
Right.
And then earlier, we started talking about the Supreme Court decision for Michigan, the Michigan Supreme Court decision that Whitmer's executive orders are unconstitutional. And then we had the concept earlier of the nursing home, putting patients in the nursing homes and things like that. So I'm just wondering, do you have any particular thoughts? You're from here in Michigan?
Yeah.
And where
I
about in
followed
Michigan?
your case. I live in Troy, not too far from here.
Oh.
I followed your case. You argued that case.
I argued that case.
I got to get you on television to explain the decision because it's a complicated. It's 4 opinions. I think you'd like to do that. It's a complicated decision. But I'll tell you,
107 pages.
107 pages.
Wow.
I know. I started reading it and all, and then I got to Viviano's
Fell asleep.
concurring opinion. But here's from a media point of view. To me, this is a huge story. And because it really speaks to the power of the governor and the powers of the legislature. And I think that that's an easy concept everybody can understand. Do we want to create one person in the state that virtually has ultimate authority when there's a perceived problem? And I think COVID, we can all argue, is a perceived problem. Maybe it's a real problem. It's a problem. But here's the deal, though. Within hours after that very complicated decision, only you can understand it. But here's the deal. The governor did a press release basically saying that she's disappointed with the result, but it's those 4 Republican justices that created a problem for the state. And it's terrible. She came up, and I got to give her some credit, within right an hour, even though she lost the case, it sounded like the bad Republican justices, 4-3 decision. Never was it mentioned 7-0. We don't know what that means. The PR for that case from the winners was terrible.
No, see,
Terrible.
I'm going to beg to differ on this
Awful.
because here's the thing. It is the news, the mainstream news media who likes to focus on giving, say, for example, Gretchen Whitmer, all the airtime she wants, no matter what she's saying, whether they agree with it or not. It sure seems like it, because she can go and get any airtime she wants. However, there have been legislators. There were legislators. Hold on.
Yes.
There are legislators that I actually don't even agree with. In fact, my own state senator said something, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. The state Supreme Court clearly said that it's unconstitutional and it doesn't follow the state statute, but we're still going to have the legal team for the legislature have to figure out what that means for the executive orders.
Right.
But at any rate, all of them have come out. My state rep, several other state reps around the state, very vocal ones. Lee Chatfield, the Speaker of the House, they got out there. They tried to have a message out there.
Did he say 7-0? Did he actually say it?
I believe he did say that. I do believe he said.
But listen, he's Speaker of the House. That's pretty good.
He is
But I'll
Speaker
tell
of
you
the
what,
House, yes.
we need. I called a number of legislators. I'm not going to mention who they are, and I said the way I read this looks to me like a 7-0. But I can't say it's 7-0. I don't really know. But I need some. Listen, the governor makes a nice press release. Yeah. It's easy to read. It's pretty. It's good. Of course, it's going to get on television.
It's full of lies and garbage.
Whatever. I don't know.
Homework better? Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
they do. Listen, the media. We can't go. Listen. Now, in this case, we cannot do 100% of the work. Spoon feed it to us, like the governor did.
Yeah.
She was great. She was great.
A lot of people on her staff, though.
It doesn't matter. The
all
winners
my point
didn't
is
do
they
it.
tried.
Spoon feed it to us.
All I'm saying is that from what I say, and trust me, I do not have any respect for most of our state reps and senators at this point, even the Republican ones, because they have not been doing as much as they could be to fight against these unconstitutional orders from day one like I have. However, I can say that at least yesterday, I saw at 4:35 that decision came out, and you're right, within the hour, she had press coverage all over the place. But she also has the government website, Michigan.gov, and everything else. And what I will say is that they did what they could with the media that they control, their own social media accounts and things like that, and they got the message out there. So all I'm going to say is, now granted their message wasn't strong enough, but it was out there, and I think to a large extent, the media in our state, the mainstream media, just didn't want to hear it. Now I can tell you that
Here's the deal. If I'm an anchor, if I'm sitting there in the anchor like I was this morning, and we had a reader there, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't think this is really right. So I kind of sugarcoated a little bit because I read it. But again, I need someone to tell me what the rule is.
Well, we're going to fix that on your station.
Well, you have to. But you have to fix it on all the stations.
I'm going to be on a bunch of radio stations tomorrow and Monday as well.
Give me your number. By the way, it's too long. It's way too long. You waited too long. You got to do it within an hour. Governor's right.
Oh, I was on YouTube and Facebook, the only media that would accept my story, and I was an attorney that argued.
I would have called you. I said, we're giving you an expert, though. We did call. But here's the point of this thing, though. Here's the point, though. I think that, listen, you blame the media, they don't get it right. Listen, people do use the media, and we love being used. But we want it accurate, and we want both sides. I go out of my way, I try to get both sides. We do let it rip. We've got to have one Republican, one Democrat, one conservative, one liberal, whatever. And if in the rare situation where we have two conservatives and one liberal, I'll hear it. And I don't like that. I want to be balanced. And on this particular case that we're talking about, which is very, very important, it affects when we go to gyms, wear masks. I mean, COVID is a big deal. And I think media, I will say that we blew it a little bit, but where is the spokesperson? You guys should have had you won, you should have had somebody ready to go to call all your media sources and say, and my God, 7-0 decision. First of all, that's unheard of with this partisan Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You've got and I would say it just like this. When you've got a partisan Supreme Court that can agree that the governor doesn't have the authority, oh my gosh, this governor is really wrong. I didn't get that. I did not get that.
So I'm going to leave you with a thought to just, further make your mind spin on this. So the part that was 7-0 was actually the first certified question from the federal district court to the state Supreme Court.
So explain it to me, easy language. Let me explain it.
Hold on. No,
hold on.
Hold on.
All right, go ahead.
So this concept of the 7-0 was just on the decision that the EMA, the 1976 law, that the governor no more she was violating state law by continuing after April 30th with these executive orders. That was the 7-0 part.
What does that mean?
That means that was not the
actress said, explain it to me like a 5-year-old.
Hold on.
Who said that?
Hold on.
Who's the actor?
Hold on.
Go ahead.
That was not the constitutional discussion. That was just a discussion. Hold on. If you don't let me stop, I'm going to put you in timeout like a kindergartner, okay? So what they did, 7-0, they agreed that she was not following state law after April 30th because the legislature had not voted to extend, okay? Are we
Yes,
good?
I got it.
That was the 7-0
Now-
part. Now, the very interesting part, the part that I wanted to leave you with, was that nobody in media was not, they were like, I saw it little bits here and there, but it was not picked up. The Attorney General herself, who is part of the same Democratic Party with, it's Dana Nessel, she actually initially came out saying, oh, these executive orders are constitutional and they're legal and you have to follow them, et cetera, et cetera. But in this case, the briefing from Dana Nessel's office said the governor was violating the executive orders, the governor's executive orders were violating the 1976 Emergency Management Act. Dana Nessel herself, our Attorney General herself, has said in the briefing and said in oral argument on September 9th that the governor's orders were violating that state statute.
The 76 one.
The
But she was relying on the
1976
1945 one, though.
Which was then
Which was
declared
then
unconstitutional.
part 2. Okay, it's too complicated. It's too complicated. Nobody understands this stuff.
But
Here's
the Attorney General was saying that from the beginning.
On
and media,
1976, though.
Yep, but
then
nobody
she had
was
a
even-
fallback. That's why she did 2 executive orders, one based on the 1976 Act and the 1945 Act.
No, because both of them actually reference the 1976 Act.
But the court, another court said 45 was okay. That's
'Cause they don't know how to read.
Well, whatever. I'm just saying that. The bottom line. But here's the bottom line. What should have been out there is that after April 30th, anything the governor did was unconstitutional.
And that's what I've been screaming from the steps of the
But that's
Capitol
what you
since
get
April
to say
30th.
that.
Yes.
Whatever executive order the governor has after April 30th was unconstitutional. Everybody in the world understands that.
Let me ask you guys a question. So what does that mean for us in Michigan going forward? How do we, so does this now mean I can throw my mask like it's a liberating session? Can
That
we have
means
a mask
literally
Mask burning.
every single executive order based on COVID-19, it's like it doesn't even exist. We don't wait 21 days like some garbage that she's talking about. Every single
What is it,
executive
21 days? I didn't understand
That's her
that.
making up. So it's based
It's
on
a motion
her
for reconsideration of the court rule?
It's based on her trying to have a motion for reconsideration only. This is not some case that started as a state court case and worked its way up. This was a federal question being certified from the federal district court down to the state Supreme Court.
Wait a minute, though. If it's just a federal question being certified by the federal judge, is it even law right now?
First of all, no matter what the courts ever do, it's never law. Judges don't get to make law ever. I don't care what justice they are.
Is it the rule? Is it the rule of law? Is it the rule of law?
No.
Does it have any effect? Put it that way. Does it have any effect?
It does.
Now?
It
goes back.
There's
to the
no
federal,
waiting.
No, it goes back to the federal judge.
No. Because what the federal judge was doing was asking the state Supreme
Yes.
Court
Help
to
me
give
out.
us the answers on the state law and the state constitution, which they did, and they are not going to touch that.
I understand.
There's
that,
no
but
appealing it.
No, I know. So, but the federal judge is saying the federal judge created this mess. The federal judge said, "The Supreme Court, help me out. I don't understand this Michigan law." Federal judge wrote an opinion.
I think the Federal Reserve
the Supreme Court
created
wrote an
this
opinion
mess.
and went back down. Went to the federal judge. So now the federal judge has to what? Do an order or adopt it?
The federal
Can
the federal judge most likely is going to take this and realize that because the plaintiff, the 3 doctors, and the patient in this case could actually win on the state law and the state constitution grounds, the federal court judge is going to say, well, that means I don't have to hear this case in terms of whether the executive orders are violating the federal constitution.
The federal judge has not done that yet.
It just happened last night. Man.
They
I'm
clearly
just saying,
do.
I'm
Are we
just
in
saying.
agreement, though, that these clearly do violate the 4th Amendment, which is the right of the
It's a
people to be
separation of
secure? Separation.
No.
But
He's talking about something totally different.
I'm just saying that we don't, that it's unconstitutional to shut down the economy. It's unconstitutional to tell you to wear a mask and to mandate it. Right? So it's a
It's
violation.
unconstitutional to tell you have to stay home. It's unconstitutional to tell you can't open your
Exactly,
business.
all of that.
But the
right?
legislature could.
No, absolutely not. And that's
No,
the
it's
thing.
unconstitutional.
Oh, that's what I
different
argued.
thing, though.
Oh, because I don't care if you're.
Too far. That's too far. That's too far. You didn't need to do that.
I didn't
Just
need to
say
do
the- All you have to argue is say the governor. All the Supreme Court did was say the governor doesn't have the authority. Right. Now it goes back to the legislature,
Right.
and they could get together and say we need a mask wearing policy.
No, they don't have the right
could.
to do that.
That's a different issue, though, isn't it? That was not decided in this
That's
case.
right.
No, it was not decided in this case.
Ah, okay.
Right.
There you go.
But I have a,
So I think that the point that you're making, though, is what does this mean? This means rip off those masks unless you want to. Open your business unless you don't want to. You can go to church. You can have parties of more than 100 or 200 or whatever the situation is. Your child does not legally have to wear a mask. All of those things are based on.
Wait a little bit, though, don't you?
You don't have to wait. No, not 1 second. You don't wait 1 second. If it's unconstitutional, it's void on its face. Marbury versus
The
Madison.
Supreme Court said that, but it's from but the federal court has to adopt
Federal
it,
court
right?
has no. They don't have to
people have
adopt
the
it.
right.
I'll agree
Absolutely
with that.
not.
Okay.
The
Then
people-
let's do a
Unconstitutional.
mask
Right.
burning party right
But wait a minute. I mean, the school where I teach is telling students what color socks they can wear. right? I mean, they wear uniforms.
But it's a choice to be
can't-
there. It's not a public school.
That's
It's a
it's a
private
private
school.
one.
It's a
thing.
choice
It's a
to be
private
there.
school, but if parents come and they say, you know, we are not going to be wearing masks, and the school says, you know, you need to be wearing your mask because this is what we've decided to do.
Then we begin a whole other segment because we are out of time on this one. So thank you very much for tuning in for this episode of The Fifth Seat, where we had a very lively media personality join us today. And we look forward to seeing you at our next episode.